Camera speeding. Sound speeding. Action.
Welcome to the first ever Urban Pebble podcast. I'm Adam Rabora.
And I'm Teresa Moore.
And I'm Daniel Mashburn.
And we are starting this podcast. Welcome. You are the first listeners ever to our voices.
Nobody has ever heard us speak before this.
I don't even know how to read, so...
The point of this podcast, all three of us are filmmakers, and we've just been running around the city of Chicago, introducing ourselves to and talking to like different filmmakers and creatives who are all trying to figure out how to get through this business, and then also all the weird little problems you find in film on the way. We're trying to get there and make films and have fun, and we just have found so much of it so interesting that we wanted to share it with everyone and figured we'd put it in a place where everyone can learn from, pull from, and learn.
Yeah, and I've always found it really interesting when you follow people who are in process, as opposed to like, I've unlocked the holy grail, the end destination. And we're like, okay, well, woo.
How did you get there?
How did you get there, please? Please and thank you, question mark.
Yeah, and I think to be in industry is not to be out of learning. So I think it's all about learning every single day, no matter what level you are in the film industry.
Yeah,
So.
And we are sure on a level in the film industry. But we've been doing this as part of the Urban Pebble Collective, which has been a super fun thing. Which is the basic idea has been a collective of artists and filmmakers that can all rely on each other, help each other out. But it started back in, it was 2019.
In the before times.
Before COVID.
Wow. Yeah, it was 2019, and it really got going right with the 48-hour film project here in Chicago, which is something that I think you'll see historically for Urban Pebble. The 48-hour film projects have been pretty formative, like moments where everybody in the collective can come together and sort of build something in real time with each other. So yeah, the 48-hour Film Fest, it was the number one thing. It was the initiator of Urban Pebble.
You worked with a couple others who are still in the group, but it was a whole nother group at the time.
Yeah, and it's funny because I think a lot of people who have done film stuff have gone through some sort of evolution. I started with so-and-so, I made this project, and then I met this one person on a project, and now I've made like 4 projects with that one person from my very first project type deal. And that's very much what it was. It was like we had been part, the folks, so like Brian Cosgriff, who is really formative for Urban Pebble. I met him at a previous 48-hour Film Fest, and then that whole group decided, maybe not this year, but Brian really wanted to make something, and so I was like, sure, I'll pop in on that weekend for the 48-hour Film Fest. I enjoyed what we did last year with that whole other group, and because we did the 48-hour Film Fest, we suddenly, we made a whole new thing. Urban Pebble came together because one thing, died.
So that, you'd done the Film Fest with them, and then myself and Miles Strong Austin, a wonderful filmmaker and writer, the two of us had long been wanting to do a film project, and had finally been, we'd critique films or, all the stuff and learn film techniques, and we're like, let's just do it. Let's make a film, and we decided naturally to do a horror film where doors eat people, called Doors.
Naturally.
But then we had filmed it. It's such a fun, silly movie that we made. I love it. You can watch it on YouTube.
Yes, it is on YouTube, on the Urban Pebble YouTube, I might say.
Watch our films. But then following that, very shortly after we did that, both Miles and I helped out on
Mrs. Hunter, which is like an early project. So all of this stuff predates Daniel's involvement with Urban Pebble, but it's important. Daniel has not really heard the origin story of Urban Pebble. So how do you feel so far hearing these little tidbits?
I personally thought Urban Pebble had been around a much longer than when I got in on it. So it's cool to see the small things, and I've worked with Brian on a film now, and then I've worked with Miles on a couple films, both 48-hour Film Festival, and it's been cool to kind of see the growth of people, but also be a part of the growth of Urban Pebble.
Yeah, and because we were just figuring it out along the way. But the one thing that we came to is basically we filmed Doors. You had done you had worked with a lot of the people from Follow Her, which was the 48-hour film, came on to Mrs. Hunter, Mrs. Hunter's Dead to make that. And then
That was a pilot that I wrote, and I was like, it's a kind of like Hallmark meets the Andy Griffith show. It's pretty low key. It's a lot of old ladies solving quote unquote crimes, but they're not really crimes because there wasn't anything that actually happened. But people think they did, and it's a small town. What you gonna do?
My name's Daniel Mashburn, and I just want to say that here at the Urban Pebble Podcast, we're just looking to do a lot on this podcast. And one of the big things that we want to do is represent local businesses and creative projects. So if you're a local filmmaker, artist, business owner here in the Chicagoland area, just hit us up because we want to plug your businesses and really represent the community because that's super important to us.
So the premise was we were like, oh, we made these things, and like, you know, Miles and I had already been talking to like, do we make like a film production company? Do we like start our own Instagram and YouTube and all those things, and then start making more films? And then you were also having similar thoughts, like, where does this go? How do we do it?
Right. What is a film festival? How does one do this? What is Can I Please Be What Part of? Question mark? The whole thing.
Yeah, and so we thought, you know what? We all really enjoyed working together, especially like on Mrs. Hunter was like a big.
It was like a 5-day
Doors
shoot.
and Follow Her teams came together with some new people also, and like we were like, what if we put this all in one place instead of us all creating separate production accounts and all this stuff, and there's so much infrastructure behind it. What if we all just put it under one umbrella so we could go to Film Fest together, we could celebrate each other's work.
Kind of have a little club where we make movies together and don't feel so alone and abandoned once the projects are over.
Yeah, and like really learn, like, because, you know, like, it's super cool to see like Mrs. Hunter get into a film fest or not get into one, or get into one that's a scam, or I'll get into one that's great, and then I know that for Doors or whatever film projects are coming down the line, or I could be like, oh, I learned on this how to like host auditions, or how to register LLC things, or which camera equipment doesn't work or does work, and it's like you're just working across the board on different problem solving, and everyone's gaining that communal knowledge together.
Yeah, so we did that it basically was Mrs. Hunter, and then COVID happened, and then people started having other film ideas during COVID because we did a lot of writing during COVID, and we did some of the 48-hour, like, you know, lockdown film fests. There's some videos there on our the YouTube.
Yes, the Scoped Out was the one I filmed with my dad as I stayed at his place sheltering from the storm as he played the assassin in that secretly. But we just literally, it was like the lockdown specific 48-hour film project where you could not leave your residence. And so him and I filmed that, and then Miles just did Foley effects from like elsewhere at the apartment and just was like sizzling things to make egg sounds. It was awesome. We, like, made it all together.
And my mom was the soundtrack.
Yes,
my mom wrote the soundtrack.
She's so good. She's so good because like there's, if you notice in that one, there's like it's about like a sniper laser and befriending a guy. But there's like little points when like the little red dot is coming through, and she adds like a little jingle to it, like ding, and it's so nice and so specifically timed, and it's just beautiful and adds so much to it.
Yeah. So after COVID, I guess the big project during COVID was shooting a feature film that Adam wrote. So like we kept churning, I guess to sort of speed up our history lesson. It's like we kept making things during this period. And as we made things, we met more people, even during COVID. And then as soon as like lockdown ended and whatnot, we were actually able to make a lot more things. And that opened up the group in a way that was really cool and brought in Daniel. So Daniel, how in the world did you actually wind up as part of Urban Pebble?
Well, you know, shout out to Lane Tech.
Go Lane!
I didn't go there, but
That is a high school in Chicago. I have learned as a non-native person to Chicago.
Yeah, I ended up living with someone who went there, who also knew Adam randomly, and he didn't introduce us at all. We were just like, oh yeah, we're gonna go to this like Casey Jones independent film, and then I just happened to meet Adam there because my roommate's like, Adam? And Adam's like, Michael? And it was just like from there, it was like, oh yeah, you should talk. And I realized real fast that Adam and I are the same person.
Yeah, we had this little moment where, because Mike and I were friends in high school, and we also did some video projects on my little camcorder for English class, which are very fun.
Fun.
But there was this funny moment where, like, I sat down with Mike and Daniel, and Daniel and I were, like, hitting it off, and we're like, did you just friend a similar guy? Is this like an ex that looks like the current girlfriend?
No.
Like,
oh no!
Mike has a type.
The Mike type.
No, and then from there, I remember grabbing beers with Adam, talking about some independent film stuff, because I come from the marketing advertising side of the world. And I was looking to get more into independent film because I'd work on commercial sets beforehand. And so I'm like, oh yeah, we should like talk and all that. And then like a 9 p.m. hangout turned into like a 2 a.m. hangout, eating pad thai, hanging out. And then I'm like, oh yeah, we should definitely do a project together. And that's when 40 Hour Film Festival rolled around.
Hey.
And I'd already been brought on to help kind of like zhuzh up some of the Urban Pebble stuff and then actually cut my teeth on 48 Hours to make a musical. Treble Clef. Find it on YouTube.
I love the plugs.
So no, it's just like, it was really cool because not being so like fixated on perfect, the 48-hour film festival is a beautiful thing because you can't make anything perfect in 48 hours. And if you can, you spent money on it, and that's not the spirit of the event.
That's not right. Who has that to spend on what?
And then now it's just been like kind of cascading into new and bigger projects, both professionally and just more personally.
Yeah, I think it's great as we've continued with Urban Pebble. Like, we've met so many cool people, and we've brought so many cool people on. And one of the beautiful things, like, we had a table read that we did like last fall, I think. And so many projects have come from just bringing a group of people together and just doing a live table read of where people are with the scripts.
Yeah, because it was like that moment where, like, just by doing that, we hosted it, and other people across the table who, like, because some people brought in actors, some people brought in their own scripts, some people brought friends, and there are some people who hadn't met each other, and they're like, wait, I love that script. I want to hop on that. Or I want to, oh, wait, I have this crazy idea for that script that you're doing. Are you going to make that? I want to be involved. And it made a couple. That was where we hopped on for the upcoming Left Brain versus Right Brain. But we were so fascinated with the idea of, like, doing the art department for that, because it takes place inside of a brain. Spoilers. But we wanted to build like an old sci-fi set, and like literally ran around and found stuff in the trash that we spray painted silver and did all kinds of cool things. And that's one of my favorite sets we've made. Like, that was such a fun project that came out of that like community event.
Yeah, and I think films like that truly reiterate that you don't just do one job on set. Because what started as just art department turned into like production and location scouting, and then like, a bunch of other stuff where I'm like, I'm happy I did it, because like now working on my own film, or the film that Adam and I are writing together, it's like cool. I've already have experience doing all of this now.
And it's cool. I think one of the other cool things about Urban Pebble that we've been trying to do is that community bonding, where we have these meetings twice a month, where it's basically one meeting is sort of like an overview of how are people's projects going, what's going on in your community, what are you excited about, how are, like, let's check in and sort of hold you accountable for whatever it is you're trying to make. And the other one is like a writers meeting, which, Adam, you want to talk about the writers meetings? Because
yeah, the writers meetings have been super fun, because it is just like, I always think like when there's other people involved, it creates a check on you in a wonderful way. But like, if you go to the writers meeting and you haven't written anything, you're like, dang, I didn't write anything this month. Or if you like did,
that's
you're
me
like,
every time I go to a writers meeting. I'm like, yep, I love that. Like,
you're super, or you're like super proud. But I think it's not about like everyone has to do stuff this month. It's like the writing journey is such a weird journey where sometimes you're so productive and you're doing stuff, sometimes you are wiped and nothing is like, you are blank page syndrome everywhere, and you can't do anything, and sometimes you're just brainstorming, sometimes you're not writing, and that's what helps you like come up with ideas, and you needed a break to stop, like, bashing your head against the wall to be like, what's the next idea? And all of that is super valid. So it's just like a place where we can check in and be like, where are people at? How are you doing? And we normally do like a little free writing activity to
with like the word of the day.
Yeah, their brains going.
Thanks, Merriam-Webster.
Yeah, we'll do like a 5-minute, just whatever the word of the day is. Everyone has 5 minutes to write.
There's some weird
something.
words of the day.
Yeah, they're not
It's strange. You can really take them all over the place. I'm just saying.
But it's fun to like, that's what inspires you for 5 minutes. We set an alarm, and this is something you don't have to show to anybody, but it's shocking for like when I'm sitting at a, trying to write my script that I'm so passionate about and I can't get a word down. And then it's like 5 minutes, write whatever. And I can just like, my brain just goes flow. And it's like, how do you connect those things? And you can do it. You have it in you. You just have to like, I don't know. It opens up those valves sometimes for me. So I like doing it and then just checking in with everybody.
Yeah, and I think the big thing of like community in this like aspect is like you learn different ways to do something you know how to do already. Like I've been writing professionally for over 5 years at this point, so I know how to sit down, I know how to write, I know how to like get pages of dialogue on. That is not the same working on individual films that I'm working on. And I'm like, oh, how do I do this? So Adam and I, when we were writing our film that's coming out, Cole's War, we didn't write it traditionally. We wrote it in the way that we had an outline, we had our characters, and we wrote the subtext because we had a general idea of where the story was going, but we didn't know the right words to say. And even on our third, fourth, or fifth draft, it got better and better because we're like, oh, this is a new way of writing. This is a different way. This isn't how I'm used to. And we were able to bust it out in quite a quick timeline, and all things considered, and how many meetings we had on it. But then, like, I'm currently working on another script, and I'm doing the David Lynch method, where you only write scene heads. You don't write any subtext or anything. You write a really long scene head, and you just go 70 of them to write a feature, or 35 to write a short, or whatever. And I'm like, oh, cool. I'm already 20 beats in, where it's like, oh, damn, that's like, in theory, 20 pages or 15 pages. I don't think I would have had those scenes fully mapped out if it wasn't for taking the context of, like, words and everything and only story driving things. Truly, like, you have 5 characters. This is the story they're doing. How are they interacting? Making sure their backgrounds line up, which for me has actually been really helpful. And I'm sure I'll try a different way to write the next script. It's all just a learning game.
I like that. And it makes me think of, like, as somebody who moved to Chicago and was like, I want to do comedy, I want to make films, I want to be on TV, I want to, create it, like, especially on camera is the world that like drew me and moves me. And I didn't know a soul when I came. I knew no one. I have an uncle who lives in the burbs. So I stayed in his spare room, and I literally would like take a train into Chicago each day. I had a class at one of the venerable Chicago comedy institutions. Ooh. But I was meeting people, and I was like, I really am passionate about filmmaking. And it was hard at first. It's like, you have to find your people too. So none of this was like an obvious, like, we all knew each other beforehand type thing at all. It's been a lot of, one, thing outside of filmmaking led to meeting one person, led to meeting a group, and led sort of this like very winding path to Urban Pebble. And then realizing that there's such a need for like a way to bring people with that interest together. And like, I think that's one of the main functions that this has provided in my life. It's like people who want to make films, but actually are making films. And like, how do you make a film? Well, the answer is you make a film. And like, well, what does that mean?
And like the one thing that we've always talked about, because I similarly like, was just like, I want to do film. And I, started running around Chicago and, trying to do stuff, and it's just, where do you start? What that first daunting question is, what do you do? And we've thought of in our talks before, like Urban Pebble is hopefully can be that thing that we would have wanted when we first started out. Like if I could have been introduced to a group that they're like, you want to do this? Here's someone who's doing that or is knowledgeable about that would love to talk to you, or like, here's this set. Do you want to just hop on the set as a PA
learn a
and
skill,
meet people, work on lights, act in a thing that we're doing this weekend, I think that is huge. And then like having a place where it, can all be together. And what's the like, what do you do when you have a film? It's like its own journey, and it's
right.
Like,
and we've been trying to figure that out.
And we're still, but like, so what we've done is like, we normally will send like, we'll encourage people, or for ourselves, we'll like send stuff out to Film Fest sometimes just to YouTube, or like trying to build a YouTube infrastructure that can host a lot of the films, so that like when, someone who's a fan of Teresa or a family friend or has seen it in a film fest, sees one of her films,
like how do we have them build on everybody?
But then they can like go like, they're like, oh, I love Teresa's movie. I want to see it again, and they'll be like, oh, what's this one that's next to it? And it might be my movie, and they might be like, oh, that's interesting. I'm actually a bigger Adam fan than I am a Teresa, and I didn't even know. And
God bless.
but like it's so we're able to just create this ecosystem that's not like 10 separate YouTube channels that each have one film and no thing, and then also helping dissect the world of film fests, which is its own like, what
It's a landscape that's hard to navigate if you're on the outside. And then it's kind of like a lot of the film stuff it's hard to navigate if you've never done it, if you don't know how to do it, if you don't know the people who do it. And that's kind of another reason that we were like, Urban Pebble is really important, because we can sort of democratize the knowledge and like as we learn things, we can share them.
And I think it's like, I guess it all comes back to community for me, because Urban Pebble, when I first got it, I'm like, oh, this is going to be like a cool production company, and we're going to do all these other crazy things. But it wasn't about that. It truly was about the community of the people being brought together, and then what those people do outside of the collective could be professional. When we all were started working together, I never thought that we would honestly be in business together. And then recently we opened up our own film production company, because that's not what Urban Pebble was going to grow into. It's growing into the collective that it needed to be, versus our own project with Film the Bag Productions. That is going to grow into, and not even grow into it, that is a business that will grow into what our professional careers are driven by, allowing our community to still be rooted in what we've always wanted, which is teaching, learning, artistic expression. Like, I wouldn't say every film I've worked on is great. I would say I had a great time on every film I've been on, because no matter how the product comes out, as long as you're working with a great crew of people, or honestly just a good group of people, don't even have to be like a crew, that could just be like someone who's learning. I'd do that every day of the week, versus like being on a multi-million-dollar set where I hate everybody.
I love that. And real quick, we are going to take a break.
Hey everybody, if you want to check out 2 of our films, they'll be screening at the Bensonville Film Festival, 3/20/25 at 7 p.m. Check out Jump Scares the Movie and American Baguette. See you there.
And we're back. So hopefully that helps give an idea of what Urban Pebble is. It's kind of ever-evolving thing, but just kind of trying to support people. And hopefully that's what this podcast is going to be too, is just bringing in people. We meet a lot of people on sets that aren't a part of Urban Pebble, but are just like really cool professionals in the industry, and like tons of different fields that we want to bring in. We want to bring in some of the other filmmakers that are a part of Urban Pebble and see where they're at, and how, what they've been doing, and just their own journeys, which aren't, necessarily always directly an Urban Pebble line, but there's so many interesting people who are creating such cool stuff. And
and we'll try to ask questions that we have of these people that we're bringing in. We'll obviously prepare, do our homework as I adjust my imaginary bow tie. But we also want to open up the questions to the community too. So if I will try to post on our Instagram at Urban Pebble and let you know who we're going to be bringing on in a particular episode. And then if you have any questions for this person, please let us know, and we'll try to ask them your questions as well. Because I think one of the cool things about being in Chicago is we can bring some really heavy hitters and people who are, doing the thing in a way that fascinates us, and we can bring them to you too. So that's the idea.
So if you have any questions for specific people, find us on at Urban Pebble at Instagram. And if you just have general questions too, feel free to reach out, and maybe that'll give us an idea for a topic later down the line as well. But we want to make this a cool communal space and learn something about filmmaking as we do.
Yeah, and the Urban Pebble podcast, much like the Urban Pebble Collective, it's based on community.
That's a great line.
Is your the writing background is coming out? Let me take a note.
I've written more headlines than probably some filmmakers will ever write scene heads.
Which Daniel was in the marketing world prior to this.
Can tell.
We're still in the marketing world now.
I know, right? I know. Our company is just like it's a different thing.
We're our own thing.
But one cool thing, so we did just drop a film.
We did.
If you want to check it out, is American Baguette.
Adam and I worked on this film because we had a little SNL audition, and then we were like, what's like the way that we can do an SNL audition rather than a tight five in front of a backdrop, or, you know, be in a black box theater and just like hit action and then go for 5 minutes. And it's like, well, we love video stuff, as I'm sure you
For the
can
record, it didn't work.
Yeah,
We're
no,
not
here
on
we
SNL.
are. We are not on SNL.
But we had
our
so much fun.
videos are on YouTube, like
Yeah, so
American Baguette.
We had ended up, we auditioned, we did like video sketches that we made together, which were so fun. And then one of them though was American Baguette, that we ran around Chicago and just filmed like a French
It's
film.
a French New Wave cinema parody. I feel very strongly about the parody
I
part.
think it's real.
Oh no. And the baguette could be, well, it's a symbol.
It's a baguette.
It's a baguette.
Just a baguette.
Just only. It's, yeah, we didn't make any jokes about a baguette at all, did we?
Well, you see, everyone, for a little bit of fun fact, we were actually going to be filmed in a baguette.
All right.
No.
And then we would film in a bag.
But
That's a faux story about our other company's name.
But yeah, so we made that. It's like 2 minutes long, super fun, and it's about to be in
A film festival. So yeah, we would love, if you're around Chicagoland on March 20th, 2025, because who knows how many years in the future people will be listening to this.
Probably this is in the year 3000.
Yeah, right. So all the way back in the year 2025, later this month in our current timeline, yes, it's going to be playing at the Bensonville Film Festival. And we're going to be posting about it on our Instagram.
And it'll be playing alongside Jump Scares the movie.
Yeah, so that's another Urban Pebble film, and it's very exciting. So if you haven't caught Jump Scares and you want to see American Baguette on the big screen, the Bensonville Film Fest is one of our favorites around the area. We've been featured in it several times over the years. So it's
we'll
exciting.
Have a crew there to see both films and have a blast.
Yeah.
Oh man. Well, I think this was pretty good. What do you think? Pretty
Let
good
us know.
podcast.
Let us
did
know.
you like it?
Yeah.
I hated it, but it's fine.
No.
Feeling optimistic.
But thank you for joining us today. We'll be back. We're likely starting this once a month. So we'll see you soon with some cool film stuff.
And
Cut.
cut.
And cut. That's a wrap, everybody.